Hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe podcast, a podcast where we look at what you, the fans, are doing in the world of Star Wars, whether that be books, comics, TV shows, movies, games, or anything else. I want to hear about it, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button in your podcast feed. This month I am joined by a writer, interviewer, and podcast host, Meg Dowell. Meg is a published author in Star Wars Insider, and she's conducted interviews with the likes of John Jackson Miller, Mark Thompson, and Ashley Eckstein, to name but a few. Her podcast is called Now This Is Lit, and I really recommend that everyone goes out and subscribes and listens to Meg's conversations, mainly focusing on books, but also the interviews she conducts are absolutely fantastic. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Past James and Meg for their conversation about Star Wars. And joining me this month is Meg from Now This Is Lit podcast. Hi Meg, how are you?
Hi, I'm so good. I don't do like guest spots as much as I used to anymore, and it's always so nice to be not hosting for once, because I do that a lot, and being able to just I don't know, just come here and chill and like realize that, oh, like I don't have to worry about pressing record or, you know, like it's nice. It's nice. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so glad you asked.
No, I really appreciate you coming on, and yeah, I'm a bit nervous. I'm not going to lie. This is the first sort of interview I've done with someone who I don't actually know, really. I know we've interacted a few times on Twitter, but it's sort of seeing you virtually. But yeah, it's I'm looking forward to the conversation, definitely. So we'll get straight into the questions, really, because it's a fairly loose format. I'll sort of slip the questions in as we go through.
Yeah.
But what initially attracted you to the Star Wars universe?
I remember being 6 or 7 years old, and that was around the time or right after The Phantom Menace came out. And I come from a big Star Wars family. My dad loves Star Wars, and The Phantom Menace was like the perfect movie to really introduce me and my brother to it, because he was much younger than I was when the movie came out, but we were both like the perfect target audience for it. So when it came out, when it must have come out on video, VHS, we had it, and I remember that movie just playing all the time. And you know, at that age, I just remember like Star Wars was, like things going fast and everything happening, and that was cool. It wasn't really like my thing, but I loved it. But I got a little bit older, and I really started to pay more attention when Star Wars was on, because it was always on, because we just love to watch it. Even when you're young and you don't really know, Star Wars is for kids, right? So even when you're really young and you don't totally comprehend everything that's happening, like it is still for you, and you're still supposed to be able to enjoy it. And that's exactly what happened. But when I got to a point where I really was very interested in stories and reading and watching movies and TV and wanting to understand, like, oh, these are characters, this is what's happening, I really was just drawn to the fact that really the simple part of it was it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And the fact that there was just this story that I loved that wasn't real, but felt so comforting to me, just because it was always there. It was always kind of embedded in the background in my life. And just the fact that it really was a story that I could escape to and really enjoy. And the more I watched, the more I got into it, the more I cared about the story and the characters, and really just felt like this is something that makes me feel hopeful and makes me feel good and happy, even when not good and not happy things are happening on the screen. And it was really like, other than like reading books when I was younger, it's really like the first movie or series that I remember like on screen really feeling connected to and really feeling like I want to watch this again and again and again. And that was really important for me. So yeah, that's how it started.
Awesome. That is an awesome story. That is an awesome way. Just the fact that it was just kind of always there, and then sort of
Yeah.
at that right time, episode one coming out. That's fantastic. My first experience of it was episode one. Really, I'd
Hmm.
seen the original trilogy like multiple times, but sort of 20 minutes, 30 minutes here and there, and sort of thing.
Hmm.
I don't know if I'd ever actually sat down and watched the entire one. So I kind of knew the story, and obviously the big reveal in Empire
Hmm.
is just kind of out there, isn't it? Really, at this point in
Yeah.
time. But yeah, just to sort of have it in your life from your dad. Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just having it in the background and obviously being able to sort of take that and run with it as your own passion. That's brilliant. So, what was your sort of first interaction with Star Wars outside of the movies?
That would have been for me, books, because I must have been, oh, I'm trying to think of years. I would have been 10 or 11. And I was at that point where I really wanted to, I loved Star Wars so much, even if I didn't, understand like all of it as a whole. And I was like, I want to watch for the first time. I want to sit down and I want to watch all the movies, just me by myself. And I want to like absorb all of this because, like you, I think I'd seen bits and pieces of probably everything at that point, but I don't know if I'd ever actually sat down to watch stuff all the way through.
Hmm.
So I did that. And I was like, Dad, and this is probably like the best day of his life. I was like, Dad, I want to watch all the Star Wars movies in order. So I started with episode 4, 5, 6, and then I went back and I watched episode 1 and episode 2. And I'll never forget running to my dad when episode 2 finished. And I was like, Dad, okay, I'm ready for the next one. And this must have been 2002, 2003. And he's like, well, the next one doesn't exist yet because it didn't come out until 2005. And that was, imagine that, just being like a child and being like, I need the next part of the story and having to comprehend that it hasn't been, they haven't finished making it yet. It doesn't exist. So instead of just letting me suffer, my dad was like, why don't we go to the library and see if they have any Star Wars books? Because he knew they existed. I did not. And I was a huge reader. And the moment where I first realized that Star Wars existed outside of the screen and existed in books, which were things I already loved. I didn't know books about Star Wars existed. And so making that discovery was life changing for me because I was like, at that point, like now we're never going to run out of Star Wars. There's always something to watch. There's always something new to read, something new to whatever. But that's not how it was then. And so we were all waiting for this new movie to come out, Revenge of the Sith, still my favorite Star Wars movie. And I was like, even though there's not new Star Wars, I don't have to keep watching the same movies over and over again. I can read books. And even then, there were so many, and there's so many more books now, but there were so many books, and I didn't read all of them. I still have not read all of them. I think there's too many. And I say that lovingly in the best way possible. But being able to, but the first Star Wars book that I read, I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of the Galaxy of Fear books. And it was maybe like the third or fourth one. And I remember reading that book and being like, I want to never stop reading Star Wars books. Because it was just the stories were just right there in front of me and I could pick them up and read them anytime I wanted. And that was me really starting to discover Star Wars as my own fandom. It had been something that was always like part of my life, but to be able to like claim that as yours and be like, yeah, my dad loves Star Wars, but I also love Star Wars. And that was so important to me and has really like led me down a path that I'm still going down. And it's just, I'm so glad that that happened. I'm so glad that my heart was broken at such a young age by not being able to consume the next part of a story that did not exist yet. Because look at us now.
It was the will of the Force. What can we say?
It was.
But no, it's the one thing I've always loved about reading Star Wars is you have obviously the mental image of Luke, Leia, Han, all the main characters, all the characters from the movie, but then you get these descriptions of other characters, and you've got the cover art to kind of base it off of, and then you can sort of see them in your mind's eye interacting with each other, and you can sort of see we've all seen the movie so many times by this point. If you're reading a book about Han Solo, you can see how he moves, and like the inflection in his voice with the words, and it's such a rich tapestry at this point in time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I must admit, I was quite devastated when they decanonized everything and
Yeah.
made everything legends. And it took me a number of years to sort of reconcile that my
Yeah.
in my own head. And in the end, I kind of went, "Well, actually, no, that's that story.
Yeah.
And if I want that story, I can go back to it whenever I want.
Yes.
I just have to accept that that's now a complete story.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
we're on the new adventure with the legends, and oh, it's been a ride. It's been a fantastic ride so far, isn't it? With the High Republic
Oh, yes.
and the new ages they're introducing us to, the new stories, the inspiration you can see that they've taken from Legends as well has been just, I think, woven together brilliantly.
Yes. Definitely agree. I love how you said that you look at Legends as a complete story because that's such a good way to view it because a lot of people struggled at first with kind of like you could almost call it a reset where like everything, all the stories from before were now in a different category. And now
Mm,
these are the quote unquote new canon. But like you go back and you read a Legends book and it still has that same, like, there's a certain feeling that every Star Wars book has. It's because Star Wars is written in a very specific voice. It is like the Star Wars voice. And that's why you read a Star Wars book and it feels like a Star Wars book. And you go back and read Legends, and whether you read it when you were younger or not, like, it still has that same feeling. And a lot of the events are different, a lot of the characters are different, but it's still Star Wars. And that's, I think, what's so cool to me is, we're getting all these new stories. And they're so, so good, but it doesn't erase what came before. Like it doesn't follow. I like to kind of think of them as two different timelines, if you will.
mm,
Like canon doesn't follow necessarily like the same characters or events, but it's still set in the same universe. And like there are Legends books where technically you could argue that some of it did happen. No one has ever said that like it didn't happen. Nothing got erased. It's just different. And the fact that we are still, you can still go back and read a Legends book anytime, especially with the Essential Legends collection, and then re-releasing a lot of these books and then doing unabridged audiobooks, which we didn't have for a lot of them before. So
yeah.
like a lot of people who maybe didn't read them before, or you haven't read them in a long time, they're so easy to consume still. It's like Legends are not gone, they're just different. And it's so fun. And I love just, and you also mentioned so much of canon being inspired by Legends, and you can pick out little things, even if it's character or planet names or little events or references that authors will put in who may have read Legends and know Legends. They're like, this may not be canon anymore, but I can still get away with putting this in there as a nod to what has come before. And I like to think that canon is honoring Legends every step of the way as it builds out more and more. And I mean, we call it the expanded universe for a reason. It's every new story is literally expanding what we know about a galaxy far, far away. I love books. In case you didn't know that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I'm a huge book fan myself. I've always wanted to just devour as many books as I could.
Yeah.
Whether that be Star Wars or a textbook for work or anything like that. It's just I just love reading. And unfortunately I've had to sort of pivot over to audiobooks quite a lot recently, and digital comics just because I'm on the move quite a lot, and I can grab 10-15 minutes to read a single issue here or there and whatnot. But it's just so good to be able to continue consuming media put out from the galaxy far, far away. And
Yeah.
as you say, there is a lot of canon stuff which could well either be a direct crossover from Legends or heavily inspired by. We know Darth Bane exists, obviously from the movies. We've
Yeah.
got a beautiful trilogy just sat there waiting in book form by Drew Capition. And I think a lot of those a lot of the strokes from those books will carry across. The actual visualization of Bane is quite different from the Clone Wars to how
Mm.
Drew Capition both depicted him on the cover and also described him in the book. But the core principles of the character are still there,
Yeah.
and yeah, I love it. I love it all. I love it all, and I love the idea of it all. and there is going to be stuff out there that's not for me, and there's going to be stuff out there that is just okay for me.
Yeah.
And that's also kind of what I love about it. It's for everyone.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is just for everyone. Yeah, so obviously the Acolyte's getting a little bit of a pasting at the moment, but completely unjustified in my opinion, and I think you share that opinion as well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's like you look at the Acolyte and you really that is a good example of like there may be things like I love it, but someone out there may watch it and not enjoy it. And like I've had that feeling about other Star Wars projects, about other Disney Plus Star Wars shows. It's okay not to totally vibe with something. And like I think the best thing you can do in that situation is like sit back and remind yourself, I love Star Wars, but Star Wars is a lot of different things all at once. And that means that sometimes there might be things that are not for me. And if they're not for me, that's fine. What I like to do and what I've really learned to do is if there's something I don't totally love, I might let it sit. I might think about it, but like if I just don't like it, I just let it go. I just kind of I'll talk about the things that I do like, but the things that I don't love, I don't really talk about. And like that is a very freeing experience if you've never had it. To be
Absolutely.
able to I'm thinking of a specific show. I'm not going to say what it is because I did overall love it, but there were things about it that I didn't love. And I mentioned the things that I liked but not feeling like you have to also talk about everything that you don't like. Like
Mm,
you get stuck in that because I've been there before. You get stuck in that and then you kind of forget that you actually like Star Wars and you actually are a fan and there are reasons that you love it and like you can't lose sight of that. And I think that's the danger of really focusing on like, oh, I didn't think this was great or I had a problem with like it's okay to have those criticisms because that's valid. Everyone has them because it might not be for you. But I think really ultimately focusing on the stuff you like and pointing out the things that, oh, I noticed this reference or like that focusing on that just makes loving Star Wars so much more fun. Because ultimately, like, I like Star Wars because it makes me happy and I want to have fun. And like, to bring any negative energy to that for me, it's just like it kind of defeats the purpose. And I've gotten to a point before where kind of stopped. I felt like I didn't like Star Wars anymore because I was so focused on everything that I wasn't loving. And that's just it. You do love Star Wars. It's just maybe like you're not seeing currently in a show that might be on right now. Maybe you're
mm.
not seeing the things about it that you love right now. But that doesn't change the things about Star Wars that you love. Like they're still there. You just may not be seeing it right in front of you. And that's fine because it isn't just for you, it's for every Star Wars fan. And people might have different opinions from you. And I'm going on a rant, but really what I'm saying is, aren't we all just here to be happy?
Absolutely. And that's the main point of it. Star Wars was originally made to make children happy
Yes.
and to also teach them some lessons, right from wrong, good versus evil,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And that's expanded as time's gone on.
Yeah.
And those children have grown up and have continued largely to love it. And I must admit, I was one of those as well. I had sort of a crisis of faith, as it were, with Star
Yeah.
Wars when the Disney acquisition happened and they decanonized everything, and I actually stepped away from Star Wars for 3 or 4 years, and then I came back to it and watched. I saw the trailer for The Force Awakens,
Mhm.
and it just reignited that spark in me,
Yes.
and I was kind of like, what have I been doing with with the last 3 or 4 years without this massive
Yeah.
love in my life? And yeah, after that, I sort of started watching the Clone Wars, and I sort of said, well, first couple of seasons, they're very aimed at children, and I was struggling with them a bit, so I pivoted over to Rebels, demolished all 4 seasons of Rebels, and cried through
Yep.
most of season 3 and 4, and then went back to Clone Wars and went, I need to know how we got here. And
Yeah.
there isn't a direct tie per se. There's crossover themes, But yeah, and I timed my finishing of the Clone Wars just as season 7 was coming out, so I was able to go on my
Perfect.
first watch from season 3 onwards, all the way through to the end of season
Oh,
7, and I was just completely hooked from that moment on. So yeah, I then it reignited my love of the books. Got my books all out of storage, so flicking through them and things like that, and here I am now, running a Star Wars YouTube and podcast. So yeah, I'm really getting back into the weeds of it. And but no, as exactly as you said, definitely try and always focus on what I liked. I'll discuss what I didn't like, but it's kind of a one and done. I'll discuss it for the purposes of a podcast or just a conversation with a friend, and just say, yeah, this didn't quite land for me. I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to let the show finish. First off, if it's mid-season, that's something
yeah,
that is crucial because it might be a complete misinterpretation,
right.
or something that I'm going, well, that doesn't make sense, and then it's obviously answered later on. I think you need to let it sit and percolate through your brain, and once the show is over or the film's over, and then focus on what you love. That's what it's all about. It's
Yeah.
what did you like from the film? And if there was nothing, then really that thing is just not for you. And
Yeah.
that's fine. Just move on to the next one or go back and watch
Yeah.
Revenge of the Sith or New Hope or Empire, whatever it may be. Just reignite that spark as soon as you can, really is my lesson of life from that period of time.
Yeah. I love stories of because this is not an uncommon phenomenon I've noticed as I've talked to more and more Star Wars fans is a lot of us will love Star Wars and have like our own little fandom, and then at some point we kind of walk away from it for a while, and everyone maybe who does that has a different reason for doing it. I kind of just wandered away because I was like in high school and I just had different interests and I was trying to figure out what those were and who I was and all that.
Mm,
But there are a lot of us who will kind of, for whatever reason, walk away from Star Wars and like, oh, I don't need it. Or maybe I didn't really ever like it that much, or it's changing and I'm not sure if I want to see what that's going to be like. But so many of us at some point find our way back. And it's always because something happens or we see something that reminds us like why we became fans in the first place. And I think it like you described that feeling of like something just reignites that spark. And that could be a movie, a show. It could be you watching something you've seen a million times again. That's always fun to do is like watching something that you loved as a kid as an adult to be like, oh, do I still like, does this hold up for me? Do I still like this? And like you do that with a Star Wars movie and you're like, oh, I remember why I liked this because it makes me feel a certain way, makes me feel comforted or makes me feel hopeful or whatever that might be.
mm,
And I love that so many of us have found our way back because, as a kid, you might watch Star Wars and like you're not analyzing it. You're just kind of like, oh, that's a cool story. And like Star Wars is that for, it can be that for anyone.
mm.
And a lot of us choose to, be more analytical and like kind of dive into themes and stuff like that because it's a story and it's fun. And we do that because we hopefully like doing it. But like, you don't have to. And I think that's something that's so beautiful about a story, a larger story like Star Wars is oh, like I can, get really deep into it. Like, oh, like what are they really trying to say? But also I can just watch a really cool movie that I love. And whatever day it might be, you might choose to do one or the other. And that's, Star Wars is there for you to really do whatever you want with it. And that just makes being a fan of it so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many great things in Star Wars, whether that be characters, ships, creatures, eras. You can really, if you find something that you jive with, you can just bump along the surface and get the main story and enjoy the hell out of it, or you can really dive down and get into the weeds.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing about Star Wars for me is really specifically the High Republic has highlighted that
Mm.
for me. And it's I heard about this Project Luminous, and I was like, what is it? What is it? And then they announced it was the High Republic, and I was like, okay, interesting idea. Books and comics pretty much only, with maybe a show at the end. And here we are. And I have consumed every book that I can get my hands on audio, and I still need to get a couple that to read physical copies, and it's been a couple of misses, not gonna lie. And for me, but that was more kind of, I think I went in expecting the
Mm,
same level of writing,
yeah.
because I've often found some of the middle grade novels have
Mhm.
not really done it for me, and then I've sort of gone
Yeah.
away and gone, why? And that I've actually gone, oh, okay, it's because I've just listened to three or four adult novels and I'm expecting
Mm,
the same sort of intellectual level. It sounds harsh, but you know
yeah.
what I mean. There's a reason it's a
Yeah.
middle
Yeah.
grade
Yeah. Yeah.
novel.
Yeah.
Um, I'm expecting the same depth of character. I'm expecting the same themes. And as soon as I realign that with what I'm consuming, I'm going, well, no, this is a really good book. And
Yeah.
so, and it's kind of that typical thing of I went through phase two of the High Republic and wasn't a particular fan. I like sort of galaxy hopping in my
Mm,
Star Wars, and this was too much on Jeddah. But I'm
yeah.
now really seeing the benefits of it in phase three. And
Yeah.
but even then I was like, I haven't enjoyed it, but I'm gonna give it a chance because they must, I trust they know what they're doing.
Yes.
The authors are of such a high caliber and they've worked together on this. I trust it. So yeah. But speaking of eras and characters and things, do you have a favorite character in Star Wars?
Oh, do I have a favorite character in Star Wars? Probably like up until, I don't know, let's just say 5 years ago. Maybe if you asked me that, I would have said like Leia or Padme. Great characters. But, as I'm going through and I'm watching all these, Star Wars shows for the first time, this character appears, a Mandalorian named Bo-Katan Kryze. And when she first appears, she's not like a huge like character. She's kind of a little bit of a side character and not a big deal. But then she just becomes more and more of a big deal, and gets this weapon called the dark saber and becomes this like central character in the larger story of the Mandalorians. And we see her in all these animated shows, and I'm like, oh, that's a really cool character. I wonder if we're ever going to get more of her. And then this show comes out called The Mandalorian, which eventually features heavily this character named Bo-Katan Kryze. And I'm going to tell you that when she first showed up in The Mandalorian, in season two, I may have blacked out for a little while. um, I I just love, like, if you follow her entire story, because it kind of jumps from, you have to watch Clone Wars, then you have to watch the Rebels, and then the Mandalorian. So she's kind of all over the place. But if you follow her whole story and like all of the things that she's been through and all that she survived and all that she continues to fight for, she's just become to me this character that's so representative of like hope, in the sense that like no matter how many awful things you witness or how many things you've been through, as long as you keep holding on to the things that matter to you and the things that you don't want to give up on. Like if you have that one thing that you're fighting for, then like you'll be okay and you'll make it to whatever your end goal is. And that's kind of what happened to her, at least as far as we know, where we left her in at the end of Mando season three, is like she fought so hard to reclaim her homeworld. And after all of that, they finally got there. And of course, the whole message is like Mandalorians are stronger together. She didn't do it alone. And I love that because who doesn't love a great story about the power of teamwork? But um, I love her character so much, and she's just become one of my favorite stories in Star Wars to kind of follow. And we don't have all of her story yet, and so I'm hoping that we get more at some point in a book or a show or something.
I would be shocked if they didn't take it beyond her appearance, her inevitable appearance in Mandalorian and Grogu movie.
Yeah.
It's I think she's going to be a recurring character for a long time, whether that be popping up here and there in books, comics, as you say. Hopefully, I would actually really love to have like a 10 issue arc just on her story. That
I
would
love
be
that.
I would love that so much. She's such an amazing character, and Katie Sackhoff is the absolute perfect person to play her
Yes.
as well. It's brilliant because she's introduced as part of Death Watch, isn't she? Where
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
not. I don't want to go as far as calling them villains.
Mhm.
They were an antagonist to the Jedi,
Yeah. Yes.
and they
Yeah.
were they were typical Mandalorians of
Yeah.
we don't want you here. We're fine on our own, sort of thing. And to see her sort of come round and really sort of work reluctantly and then willingly with others, and yeah, seeing her story where obviously we don't actually see it, we've just been told the story of her losing the dark saber
Yeah.
to Gideon, and then her journey to reclaiming it and proving herself worthy to lead
Yeah.
Mandalore. It's it's an absolutely fantastic story, and yeah, a phenomenal choice for a favorite character, and one that is, I don't doubt, going to last long in the memory, and many more stories to come.
Oh yeah.
So, favorite character, almost their own characters in themselves. Do you have a favorite ship at all, or
Oh,
vehicle? It can be a ground unit as well.
um, this is an answer I go with often, but for good reason. The ghost. It's got to be the ghost for me. Because like really, it is kind of its own character in Rebels. It's not just their home. It's like kind of like it's part of their team. They couldn't do a lot of the things that they do without it. And it's just kind of like embedded in their family unit. And like, you're not the ghost crew without the ghost. And the fact that it showed up in Rogue One briefly, like if you blink, you miss it, but it
Mm.
is there, and that's the kind of those are like the little things in Star Wars that make me so happy. It's like you didn't need to put the effort to stick it in there, but you did it just because you knew that it would make some people happy, and it did make some people happy.
Absolutely. I also love the fact they stuck it in the Rise of Skywalker, I believe, as well.
Yes,
It's in the
yes,
background, isn't it, when
yeah,
Lando arrives? So yeah, it again, couldn't agree more. It's a great answer. The Ghost is it's at this point in time, it's an iconic ship. Not
yeah,
quite as iconic as maybe the Millennium Falcon, but it's not far off.
yeah,
It's now appeared obviously in live action as well as the animation, like proper live action. I'm gonna like the little cameos are
yeah,
fantastic,
yeah,
but they actually built the set
yeah,
for Ahsoka, and to
yeah.
get to get the Ghost Crew through Ahsoka, which was, let's face it, it's Rebels season 5. It was
Yeah.
there was that was probably as close as they've come, I think, where you have to have watched something before to understand
Yeah.
and put in quite a commitment to actually fully
Yeah.
appreciate everything that's going on, with the world between worlds, the Purgle, the Ghost Crew, just Ahsoka's story as well. It's yeah, it's but the Ghost as a ship is just, you're right, it's its own character, just like the Millennium Falcon is its own character, just
Mm.
like Luke's X-wing with R2 is also its own character. But yeah, so again, great choice, and can't there's no fault there in any way, shape, or form for picking such a great ship. So, do you have a favorite era in Star Wars?
I think for me, it's probably the period of time between the end of Revenge of the Sith and the start of A New Hope. Not just because of Rebels, but we've gotten a lot of really good stories in that time period in the last couple of years, whether it be the Fallen Order games or Kenobi. It's such an interesting Bad Batch. How could I forget Bad Batch? It's such an interesting period of time for me, because you're seeing like the aftermath of oh, there's no hope left in the galaxy. And then slowly, as time goes on and you have these different characters, you see the slow build up to, oh, like there is actually hope. We will actually find it again. And it's not there right away. But the more stories you get and the closer you get to closing that gap, the more and more you see it. You see what we get in Andor, and you see like the little things that are going on behind the scenes there, and you see Rebels, of course. So like everything we get that's like, oh, we know, of course, how the story is going to end, but there's something so beautiful about seeing that very sinister middle act and kind of being like, oh, like things are not good right now, kind of like the end of The Empire Strikes Back. Like things are not good, but they have to end better, and they do eventually. But I kind of love, the Empire is kind of ruling everything and taking over, and it's not good for a lot of people in the galaxy. But slowly but truly, that resistance is building up, and to see at different points of time how that's happening at different places is so cool to me. And I think like they can never tell too many stories in this era. For me, I think it's just it's kind of in between like official eras, so maybe that was like a cheat answer, but like that's my
No,
answer.
it's classified as Rise of the Empire as its
There you
own
go.
era now. So yeah, no, an absolutely perfectly valid pick there. It's it kind of one of the reasons I love Star Wars is because I can relate to so much of it, and the stories
Mm,
and the lessons and things like that. I try and take them away and apply them to my own life, and
mhm,
try and use it to help guide me in a lot of ways. And I look at that period of time, much as we were saying earlier, it's the period where kind of everyone's walked away and gone,
mm,
this isn't for me. I'm just going to keep my head down. I'm just going to roll with it and we'll see what happens. Politics doesn't affect me, all the other bits and pieces.
mm,
And then the boot hill comes down more and more and
mm,
more
mm.
as that time period goes on. And people start going, this is actually now starting to affect me. And
Mm.
somewhere in multiple planets across the galaxy, that spark is lit, much like sort of those the dark years for me, as it were, with where I
Mm.
walked away from Star Wars, and then you just see something, go, I like that, and for me it was I
Yeah.
like that. Whereas in the galaxy, it's I'm not going to take this anymore, and
Yeah.
so sort of the analogy there is kind of the dark times, and I really like the fact that they're exploring that period of time at the moment,
Mm.
and they're doing it in such a way that it's not just setting up the original trilogy or what's happening in the Mandoverse, it's also setting up the sequel trilogy as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is happening here and now in this period of Rise of the Empire is having such far flung consequences, and it's they're weaving this tapestry in such a way that they just tweak a thread here, tweak a thread there, and it just has this ripple effect throughout, and it's just absolutely fantastic. So, and there's, as you say, there's some great books, there's some great shows, there's some great animated shows. It really is becoming a really rich, diverse area of the galaxy, period of the galaxy.
It really is. And I think it's like it's important, I think, to be able to relate some things in Star Wars back to your life or the real world because, you know, I won't get into specifics, but like you kind of look around and you look at a lot of things that are going on in the world and you're like, oh, it kind of does feel pretty hopeless and things are not looking great for a lot of us. But then you look at a story like Star Wars and you're like, oh, like things also weren't going great in the galaxy at one point. And then a bunch of people just decided they weren't okay with that and they did something about it. And like even just that small reminder that like, oh, like there is power in deciding that you're not just going to sit by and let things happen. That really makes you think that maybe that could happen in the real world and maybe it will and it has before. And maybe it'll motivate someone to, do what they can to make things a little better. And like if Star Wars motivates someone to do that, it's just a story, but it's so much more than that. It's so powerful. And I think, you don't always have to relate everything. back to your life or the real world, but sometimes you do, and sometimes it's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Like my personal favorite character is Yoda. I
Mm.
don't know how I can relate that back to my own life. I'm a lot taller than him, and I'm not 900 years old. Although some days I do feel it. Um, but um, but no, I look at things like the wisdom that he brings and the way he looks at things. And actually, one of the things I'm really loving about things like the High Republic at the moment is they're taking just that little bit of shine off of people like Yoda. Like he is Yoda. He is the Grand Master of the Jedi. He is the epitome of the light side. But he makes mistakes.
Mm.
He is mortal. He doesn't have all the answers at his fingertips, and not everything is a lesson that he's going to impart. And he made a decision in Revenge of the Sith, and he ended up losing, and he ends up on Dagobah because of it, hiding for 20 years, and
Yeah.
he rectifies that mistake by training Luke. And so it's always that thing of it's the hope that things can get better, but it's also
Yeah.
having the courage to take a stand and making things get better and
Right.
trying to figure out when that point is of you hope and hope and hope and go, no, I actually need to do something now. Um,
Yeah.
and that's everyone's personal journey. So
Yeah.
there is a lot that can be applied, and it's done in a way that's, as I said earlier, very kid friendly, and it still is thought provoking enough for adults to really get so much out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and there's laser swords. Like,
Yes, exactly.
but no, it's I love everything to do with the Star Wars universe, which is very much why I started this podcast as a way to sort of share that love. And part of that is detailing what I and my guest have been doing recently in Star Wars. And so, Meg, what have you been up to recently in Star Wars?
I've been playing probably way too much Star Wars Hunters. Is it finally came out, and we've been waiting for this game for a long time. The tie-in book for the game came out last year.
Mm.
So it's like we've known about this game, and they were taking their time with it, and I'm so glad that they did, because it's just so fun. It's so fun, and it's matches are like what, 5 minutes at most, maybe. So like you can just take a break from whatever you're doing and just play a game on your phone for 5 minutes, and I'm not good at it, but there's something so joyful about just doing something that you're not good at. And it's Star Wars, and the music is great. And I'm a huge fan. I'm caught up on canon reading right now for Star Wars. So, like, other than going back and reading some legends, I don't have a ton of books to read right now. So I'm looking for other things. Of course, The Acolyte is on, and it's fantastic. But definitely just being able to have like this game coming out on the same day as The Acolyte.
Yeah.
I
What
actually,
to do? What to do?
yeah.
I mean,
Well, I normally like when you're like sitting there waiting for a show to drop, which doesn't really happen that often anymore, but like they dropped it here in the evenings. So it kind of feels like when you're a kid again and you're waiting for your show to come on. But I was sitting on the couch, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be forever until this comes on. And I looked, and it was like 10 minutes away, because I've been playing Hunters on my phone and I hadn't been paying attention. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of sad that I have to stop playing this so I can go watch more Star Wars, but like, oh, the worst life, truly. But yeah, that's really what I've been up to, is kind of just waiting for the next book to come out so I can read it. But yeah.
absolutely. So I take it you finished Temptation of the Force, have you?
I did. I did, and I want to read it again. It's one of those books. Obviously, I won't spoil anything, but it's one of those books where you read it, and you know that like there are little details that you probably missed. There are little things throughout that were in there that you're like, oh, you're maybe reading a little faster because you want to know what happens next in the story. And I'm like, but the thing with Tessa Gradden is the writing is so poetic and beautiful that like it like stopped me in the middle of paragraphs, in the middle of sentences sometimes, because I was like, that sentence is the most beautiful sentence I've ever read. This is a Star Wars book. What is happening? I say that lovingly. And so I really do need to go back and I'm probably going to listen to the audiobook the second time around, just to absorb it. Star Wars audiobooks are just on another level anyway.
Oh,
They're
they
just
are.
so good with the not just the narration, but the music and the everything. I love them. And so I'll probably like I like consuming the audiobook also if I can, because it's kind of like a whole different experience, even though it's the same story. And I don't have a ton of time to reread Star Wars books, but I love rereading them when I get to, because it almost does feel like, you're experiencing the same story again, but it is different. Or you
Hmm.
missed things, or with the case of Temptation of the Force, it's like I loved the book so much that I want to spend time with these characters again, especially because there's not a ton of High Republic left. I mean, we have a year left in terms of like release dates, but in terms of like actual stories, we've gotten
Not
more
much.
than we're gonna get, and it's kind of like, oh, I don't want it to be over, but yeah, it's a very good book. If you have not read it, definitely don't read it if you haven't read other Phase 3 books, because it is a continuation of other stories that you kind of need a good foundation for. But definitely, if you have read some prior material, definitely read it, because a lot of things happen that you may have been waiting for, and they finally happened, and it was worth the wait. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I've just checked my Audible, and I am on chapter 44. So
Oh,
I listened to it on 1.5 speeds. So I've got about 3.5 hours left. And yeah, I just wanted to double check. It's Mark Thompson who narrates it, who is quite possibly the best audio narrator out there at the
yes,
moment. The amount of different voices that man can do,
yes,
and with the music and the inflection on all the characters, like he knows the characters,
yeah,
and you can tell he does the research.
oh
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, as I say, I'm only halfway through, much more than halfway through, but I've got about 3.5 hours left of Temptation of the Force, and I've audibly cheered in my car
Yes.
listening to this book at certain points, and I didn't think an audio book could do that to me.
Yeah.
And this one
Yeah.
has been absolutely blown out the water of my expectation. And I had quite high expectations for it. Like the
Mm.
adult novels of the High Republic have been largely fantastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Meg. I really appreciate you coming on and having this wonderful conversation. And I would like to say that you are always welcome to come back whenever you want to, and hopefully you will want to come back at some point in the future as well. But until then, why don't you tell the listeners where people can find you?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I'm still on Twitter. If you want to find all the things that I do, you can follow me at Meg Dowell. That's where I just post. I'll post some silly Star Wars stuff every once in a while, but really it's where I post all the things that I do. One of those things I do is a podcast called Now This Is Lit, which is a Star Wars book podcast about books, but also I get to talk to people who write the books or who edit the books sometimes. And it's just all about, loving Star Wars books and really like treating them as this amazing thing that they are. And that is, if you just Google Now This Is Lit, you'll find all the things. Um, I love doing it. I love not just getting to talk to authors, but really getting to do the occasional deep dive into like, how does book publishing work and for Star Wars, or, that recently I did something on like the Star Wars books that are 10 years old this year, and didn't realize until I'd done that oh, like there were still Legends books that came out in 2014, even though the changeover had technically already happened, because that's just how the timeline works. And I think that's just really cool. So like I'm learning new things as I'm doing it, and hopefully if you want to listen, you'll learn some new stuff too.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And I'll hand back
Yeah.
to future James. And a huge thank you to Meg Dowell there. And as mentioned, before the interview and during the interview, her podcast, Now This Is Lit, go check it out. It's a great podcast. It really is. Turning our attention to what I've been up to this month in Star Wars. It's not been... Not sure. I'm not sure if it's been busy or not. There's been a lot mentally to deal with, and we'll come to that. But game-wise, Galaxy Heroes, just a constant grind. I must admit, I'm starting to feel a little bit fatigued with it. I'm not ready to give it up or anything like that. So it's just not capturing me as it once was at the moment. I think I'm just a little bit burnt out after a few long grinds. But I finally unlocked Profundity, which is Admiral Radiss's ship, and that has been great fun. The ultimate ability on that, you release a little Tantive 4, and it takes away the opponent's capital ship. And it's just great fun. I've upgraded Saw Gerrera now to 7 stars. And I've got the Marauder, the Bad Batch ship, up to 7 stars. The Gungan Bombardier is now 7 stars as well. And I'm currently working on the TIE Echelon Fighter, Princess Kanisa, Range Trooper, and Veteran Chewie. So they all need some stars. Range Trooper is nearly there. And so I've just started in the background doing Veteran Chewie as well. My main goal there is just to move all of my characters up to 7 stars. So it's then just a process of gear, and I can then slide in the newer characters as and when they become farmable. In terms of the GAC side of things, the player versus player side of it, I did get back up to Kyber 4 following a trip back to 3v3. So you're using 3 units against 3 units, and we are now back in 5v5, and I'm already back down to Kyber 5. So I'm definitely in a yo-yo situation a bit at the moment, which I must admit is probably isn't helping how I feel with it all. It's very much I win, and then I lose. There's no ups and downs. There's no real close ties. It's I either win or I lose, and it's heavily either way. But it's a daily grind, and I'm not going to give it up. As I say, I do still thoroughly enjoy the game. And it's a game that I really like. I've always really liked that sort of game. It's back to no more play on Jedi Fallen Order, unfortunately, for me this month. It's been a busy one. But turning our attention to sort of the collectible side of things, Star Wars Unlimited, my Spark of the Rebellion base set, is now complete. The videos on YouTube are catching up slightly. So this is now breaking news for the channel and the brand of Star Wars Universe. I have now completed officially the base set of Spark of the Rebellion. I also booked my pre-release ticket for the Shadows of the Galaxy set, which will be taking place on the 6th of July. And I'm going down to Coffee's Games and Comics in Chichester for that. That's a 12 o'clock start. So I don't know if they've got any tickets left for that, but if you see me down there, say hi. I'll be the one probably filming my unboxing, so I might need to do it in store for the YouTube video coming out on that Monday, which will be the 8th. So yeah, that video might be filmed fairly close to the release date, which is not ideal. I mentioned previously that I sent off my Cassian Andor showcase card to PSA to be graded, and I can confirm that has now come back, and it was graded at a grade 9, which, having looked over the card very, very closely and done some online research into how the grading works, I think it's a fair grade. There's one mark on it which will take it away immediately from a 10, and I'm happy with a 9, and it is now currently taking pride of place in as part of my display. I have played a lot of online games, mainly just against AI for Spark of the Rebellion, Star Wars Unlimited, just to try and get used to the mechanics of the game, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's been a really, really good fun, and hopefully when the starter sets come out for Shadows of the Galaxy, I'll be able to actually have some real life games. I've kind of lent more towards the Imperial side of things, the Darth Vader led starter set. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if I'll get into deck building or anything like that. We will have to just wait and see what comes along with that. Comics-wise, I have read The High Republic Phase 3 issue number 8. High Republic. There's 2 more issues in this phase, and then the main run of the comics is done. And I'm really sad about that. It's been a great ride through. It's been a great series. It's been a fantastic era, and I've really, really enjoyed it. I've loved getting to know Bel Zettifar, Sakir, and all the others, Marchion Rowe, and all the others in comic form. It adds so much to the books and the characters themselves. It really does add so much. Finished off the Mace Windu miniseries. It was fine. If you like Mace Windu, you're probably going to love it. It's very Mace Windu. I myself, I'm not a huge fan, as I said previously, of the character, but it was fine. It was a decent enough story. They released a Star Wars Episode 1 special, which was I remember enjoying reading it. I don't actually remember a huge amount of the story. I think it was more about Anakin on Tatooine, but it was worth it. It was right after the initial hype of the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace and all the rest of it. Definitely worth a pick up. It's a slightly more expensive comic. I think this one was £5 or £6. So it's a big issue. It is a big issue for a comic, and worth it. As I'm pleased it's in my collection, so I can go back and flick through it if I want to. Darth Maul, Black, White, and Red, issues 2 and 3. This has been fantastic. This has really, really been good. It suits Darth Maul more than Vader, this style of writing and this artwork style. I think probably because Darth Maul is black and red, and so he really pops on the page, whereas Vader, it's mainly his lightsaber and his eyes are affected by sort of the black and white tones of it, and then the red really popping off the page. But the stories, they're harmless. They're sort of inconsequential, but they are really, really well done. It's just a little bit more of Darth Maul being Darth Maul, being sort of the Sith assassin that he was and that role that he was playing. Jango Fett miniseries has now concluded. I've read issues 2, 3, and 4. Decent enough series. Again, it's a character I didn't necessarily feel the need to have a lot more said about him, but I'm not sad that I have more information about him, and interacting with Aura Singh, interacting with the bounties and things like that, and just general members of the Star Wars galaxy. It shows a slightly different side to him as well, which I'm not sad about. It was very well done, very well written. The colours were really well done. The artwork was good, and it's a fun little four issue arc. I've also started the 2020 main Star Wars comic run. I think I mentioned in my last episode I'd bought a whole load of graphic novels or trade paperbacks digitally in and around the May the 4th sale, and it's really good. I can't lie, it's really, really good. It's set in the immediate aftermath of Empire Strikes Back. Like the movie is still going on when it begins. The comic series begins, and we are thrown into an adventure of Luke trying to find a new lightsaber, and spoilers, he does, and it's not what you think. It's not his new lightsaber in Return of the Jedi, so we know he's probably going to lose this one at some point in the series, but we'll see what happens. It's really, really well done. You've got all of the original trilogy cast. You've got, I know that it leads into War of the Bounty Hunters, Dark Droids, all the other, Crimson Dawn is probably in there as well. There's going to be tie-ins to a lot of the stuff I've already read, so having the main run go is going to be really, really interesting, and see it almost with the perspective of having the wide vision, and then sort of zeroing in on the main story and seeing how that all works and flows and comes together. The first volume is issues 1 to 6, and it's called The Destiny Path, and I can't fault it. It was a really, really good book, So much so that I've actually immediately started Volume 2. That is a really good indication, in my opinion, that a book is good, is that you immediately start reading the second one and you're enjoying it. And it makes you want to pick up the book and read on. But that's it for comics. Looking at actual books, or for me, audiobooks, it was only Temptation of the Force this month. It was a big book. I think it was about 17 and a half hours in total, but narrated by Mark Thompson. A really, really good book. A little bit of a lackluster ending for me, personally, but it did things that I didn't think I would ever see in a Star Wars book, and I think it really amped up the impact by the fact that I was listening to an audio version. So chapter number 53, for anyone out there who has read it, that chapter in audio format, I didn't really know what to do with myself during it. I was just stood in my kitchen listening to it and didn't know what to do. I'm not going to say any more. If you want to know what I'm talking about, go and read the book, go and listen to the book. It is very good. It expands on the stories told so far. It expands the Marchion Ro and the Nile saga in Star Wars. It expands on Elzar Mann, Avar Kriss, Vanestra Ro, and loads of other characters. Buriaga and Bell and Ember. The only person missing for me, which I'm hoping he will appear again soon, is Geode. I need some more stories about Geode. Please, Star Wars universe, anyone listening out there who has the power to make this happen, please, I need some more stories about Geode. TV, this is where a lot of bandwidth, brain power has been taken up in the last 4 weeks, is The Acolyte. I have loved this show, and I've really, really enjoyed seeing the High Republic, or the tail end at least of the High Republic, in full swing and on the small screen in live action. I have really enjoyed the characters. I've really enjoyed the choreography. The choreography has been amazing on this show. There is just a real divide in the Star Wars fandom, and I don't want to go on about it. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to drag anyone else through the mud. Just let us enjoy it. Let the people who enjoy it enjoy it. If you don't like it, fine. Don't watch it. That's the end of it. That's been my month in Star Wars. I'm so looking forward to the last 3 episodes of The Acolyte. Episode 5, my goodness me. I physically moved whilst watching that. My head was snapping around, going, what's just happened? I audibly gasped at one point. One of the best episodes of Star Wars television, I think, that's ever been made. And that's my opinion. I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to double down on it. I truly, truly, truly believe that. And I can't wait for the rest of this series to conclude and see how it all ends. Because we still have a couple of shots from the trailer that we haven't seen yet. And we are 5 episodes deep in this show now. And so I am so looking forward to it. And so turning our attention to what you guys have been doing, I'm going to start this month with good friend of the podcast, fellow SPARC Jedi Council member, Todd, who has got a monster update for us this month. He's still reading Temptation of the Force. He's watching The Acolyte and enjoying it. He did a live Mocktails from the Cantina show covering the first 4 episodes of The Acolyte. Mocktails from the Cantina. Go give them a listen. They're a good show. He's got one hell of a Star Wars haul for my birthday and Doggy Father's Day. And he's pre-ordered The Stranger's Black Series helmet. The Stranger is the unknown Sith Lord from The Acolyte, for anyone wondering. And he's shared pictures of the mask, also known as Smilo Ren, and the Sith Who Laughs from various different places on the internet. I have seen this guy referred to, and I love both of those names. They are absolutely fantastic. He has a Puffer Pig Funko Pop, which is absolutely fantastic. He's managed to acquire some Star Wars Oreos, the light and dark side ones. I think these are a US exclusive because I have not seen them anywhere in the UK. And I am very, very disappointed by this information. We really need to get on our game with that. Star Wars t-shirts, some Star Wars flip-flops or sliders or whatever you want to call them. And Star Wars coffee product. 3 bags of coffee collection. That looks interesting. I imagine there's going to be a light and a dark roast in there, isn't there? Star Wars jumper and some Star Wars Crocs by the looks of it as well, which look absolutely fantastic. And a whole load of Funko figures. So this is a Darth Vader Funko Classic. Darth Vader on a TIE Fighter, Balin's Skull, a Phase 1 Clone Trooper, Mandalorian in N1 Starfighter with Grogu. I might need to add that one to my collection. Jar Jar Binks versus General Grievous. Didn't even know that was a thing. Okay. Grogu with one of the Babu Frick creatures from Mando Season 3. Morgan Elsbeth, Shin Hati, and a Mandalorian guard. So that's a huge haul there. And he also won a Star Wars trivia contest, winning himself $50. So, well done. Well done, Todd. And he also adds, he ate that whole pack of light side Oreos in one sitting. So, another fine achievement. So, I'm not jealous of that at all. Turning our attention from Todd to good friend Hayley Hobbs, also SPARC Jedi Council member. She has been reading, naturally, and she has been reading Star Wars Rebels, Servants of the Empire, Edge of the Galaxy, Rebel in the Ranks, Imperial Justice, and The Secret Academy. I'm guessing those are the subtitles for those books. Dynasty of Evil, Temptation of the Force, and Star Wars Rebels, The Rebellion Begins. So we will be discussing Dynasty of Evil, or Dynasty of Evil, depending where in the world you are, on the next Sacred Jedi texts over at Source Pages. I believe that one's had to be pushed back due to scheduling conflicts until August, I believe. So that's coming down the pipeline. Keep an eye on your feeds for that one around August time. And yeah, so she's added here, found the Rebels chapter books on Kindle Unlimited and read them just because I love Rebels. Temptation of the Force was good, but not great for me. I think from our conversations, Hayley, you gave it 3 stars, I believe. And then in the comics side of things, she's been catching up with the High Republic Phase 3, issues number 4 and 5. So Hayley reads on Marvel Unlimited, which is generally around about 6 months behind. So that's why a little bit behind on that. TVs and movies, watching The Acolyte, obviously, and it says in brackets, loving it. Hayley's husband, Nathan, update from him as well. And he has read Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising, and really enjoyed it. So thank you very much, Todd and Hayley. We also have an update, naturally, from Brian, which is a voice note, which I'll pass over to now.
I reread or re-listened to Heir to the Empire, continuing my play of Jedi Survivor. I got some Black Series and Funko Pops. The Black Series Ki-Adi-Mundi is really cool and detailed, and so is the Droideka. And I've been on, let's see, the Sin My Tales thing that Suds was on for the Acolyte, and I've been enjoying it, and that's about it.
Thank you, Brian, for your update as always. And yes, I will say the Star Wars Episode 1 Funkos do look amazingly well detailed for it being a Funko Pop. The Droideka is a personal favourite of mine, but the agreement I made with my wife means I'm not allowed to get it. Maybe in the future. One last bit of feedback from a listener, Dan Griffin at DanGriffin21 on Twitter. I've been watching Acolyte, naturally. Bit of a slow burner across the first 3 episodes, but episode 4 has kicked it right into gear. Liking the mystery of who the Master is and would like to know more about who raised Osha. Extra point for Carrie Ann Moss cameo. Well, I think we might get a little bit more Carrie-Anne Moss, Dan, in the coming weeks, and hopefully we do. She's a fantastic character, and I really liked that she brought quite a lot of her Matrix training to the fight choreography. I don't know if that would have necessarily happened without someone like Carrie-Anne Moss coming onto the project, but we will see. So, big thank you to everyone who has contributed to this episode. If anyone else would like to contribute to future episodes or come on and have a chat about Star Wars, please do get in contact. I can be contacted on Twitter at StarWarsUpod or by email starwarsupod@gmail.com. Don't forget the YouTube channel. Go over there, like, share and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me. Leave a podcast review on your podcast app of choice. That really helps the podcast as well. And until next time, may the Force be with you. Always.